webinar is to begin to talk about how we as student affairs professionals can help best support our veteran students, not only within housing, but on campus in general. It's important that we be aware of some of the challenges that they may face when transitioning into higher education, as well as what we can do to help support that transition. So as Ben stated, I'm delighted to have a couple of very knowledgeable individuals with us today. Again, my name is Jacob Hanley. I'm Assistant Director of Community Living at Carroll College in Helena. We have Brandy Keely, the VA Service Coordinator and Certifying Official, also here at Carroll, and Shawn Grove, the Vets Office Director at the University of Montana over in Missoula. So for everyone taking part in this webinar, as a side note, I highly encourage you to write down or post any questions you may have throughout the presentation, as Brandy and Shawn hold a wealth of knowledge in the area, and I really hope we can utilize them to learn more in the area. So remember to ask those questions. You can post them throughout the presentation or hold them until the end, but our goal is to make sure we have some time at the end to address any questions that come up. So what are we going to cover today, just to give you a brief outline? We'll first provide you with a little background information on the terms and areas. I think it's really helpful to refresh our memories on what some of the terminology means, so we're all on the same page. We'll next talk about what the transition looks like for a veteran moving from the U.S. Armed Services to an educational setting. And as they are making that transition, we'll highlight some of the challenges they may face that are important for us to be aware of so we can help support that transition. Next, we'll look at what are some of the best practices and what some other institutions are doing to help support veterans on campus. And we'll talk about what we specifically as student affairs professionals can do to support them as they pursue an education. And finally, like I said earlier, we'll have the time sometime at the end of the presentation for any questions you may have. And as I said earlier, again, we have two individuals that I'm excited that they're here. So make sure you post any of those questions you have so we can share that knowledge with the group. So that's a quick outline. To give you some background information, just some general information, I'll cover this quickly, just so, again, we're all on the same page with terminology and we can have a little bit of a refresher. What is a veteran? Taken from the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs website, they define it as a person who served in the active military, naval, or air service and who is discharged or released under conditions other than dishonorable. What does discharge mean? It's a military member being released from their obligation to continue service in the armed forces. A little bit more background information, again, just as a refresher, the branches of the U.S. Armed Services, the Air Force, sometimes they're commonly called airmen, the Army, called soldiers, Coast Guard, sometimes called guardians, the Marine Corps, Marines, and the Navy, most often we hear, called sailors. A couple of other terms just to highlight: you have military personnel who are service members, you have dependents who generally are family members of individuals that have served or are serving, you have the National Guard, which is the reserve military force, and you also have reserves, which usually are individuals that are not assigned specifically to a combat in case any unforeseen circumstances come up where we may need them to be part of. So that's just a quick background on the branches and some of the key terms. I think it's helpful to do a little refresher to be aware of. Some general information. This is taken from the U.S. Census from the website of the Department of Veteran Affairs. There are, right at the bottom there, about 21.8 million veterans in the United States. And you can see that breakdown there right below that. About 20.2 million are male, 1.6 million being female. Of course, across all ages, that's not a specific range. That's just the total number across the United States. What levels of education do we see generally? A veteran is more likely than an average American to have earned a high school diploma, but less likely to complete a college degree. So you can see there 92% of veterans 25 and older have at least a high school diploma, and about 26% of veterans 25 and older have at least a bachelor's degree. This is, I think, a useful chart to note. This goes over the current number of veterans that are receiving educational program benefits, so potential benefits that are helping them pursue a degree or move forward with their higher education. And so the latest number there, all the way to the right at the end in 2012, you can see was just at about 950,000. So across the United States, that's the number of individuals that are utilizing benefits to help continue their education. I also note that 42% increase from 2009 to 2010, and Shawn will help elaborate on this, but when the post 9/11 GI Bill was fully enacted right during that time period, that's what that 42% increase occurred from. So that's some basic statistics about the number of individuals across the United States. I also think it's important to look at perhaps what the member institutions in our region have in terms of numbers. So one of the first AIMHO members, Arizona, how this works is, so the veteran population listed in that state is about 527,400, and the number of individuals within the state of Arizona, the number of veterans within the state of Arizona that are utilizing educational benefits is about 45,000. And of course, these are estimates, but it's fairly accurate data. So I'm just going to click through and let you take a look at the rest of the states within the AIMHO region, so you can get an idea of, again, the total population of veterans that are living in that state compared to the number of individuals that are utilizing some type of educational benefit within that state. I'll give you a moment to look at this. So now that you have a little bit of an idea, I'm going to send a poll out to everyone. And so with that information in mind, we have a question for you. And so we want to pause for a moment to take a quick poll. So you should see the poll coming up on your screen just about now. And we'd like you to answer it to the best of your ability. And so the question for the poll is, how many veterans or dependents, so I'm just clicking this open here, live in your on-campus housing? And so we'll give you a moment to think about this. Could be a challenging question. And so take a moment to decide which of the answers best represent where you are at. And we'll give you just a minute to do that. And what we'll do is, once we get answers from mostly everybody, we'll go ahead and post this poll so that all of you can view it to see where we're at. And so you have the answers 0 to 10 individuals that are currently veterans that are living in your on-campus housing, 11 to 50, 51 to 100. My institution doesn't compile this data, or my institution does compile this data, but I'm unaware. And so we'll give just a little bit more time here to let the rest of you get your vote in. Still, I think, waiting for just a couple more institutions to get their vote in. If anybody would like to take the last couple of seconds to make that choice. It is confidential. We don't plan on sharing who voted where, so. Seems like we probably have gotten all the responses. So we're going to close that, and then what we'll do is we'll share that with the group. And so you should be able to see that on your screen right now. And so you can see 43% of the institutions, or the individuals attending this, say that 11 to 50 veterans live currently in their on-campus housing, while 14% say about 51 to 100. Another 14% say my institution doesn't compile this data, and 29% says my institution compiles this data, but we're unaware. So it's a pretty interesting spread there. In the conversations that I've had with both Brandy and Shawn, speaking, I guess, specifically for Carroll College here, we currently, to the best of my knowledge, working within housing, I don't believe we have any individuals, veterans that are living on campus. Dependents, perhaps, but not veterans themselves. And so, which that could be applicable to the answers here, whether it may be a veteran or whether it may be a dependent. You can see those numbers sort of distribute across the poll. I don't know if Brandy or Keely had any, or Brandy or Shawn had any thoughts on this poll at all.
Well, I'll say this is hi, I'm Shawn. I'll say that it's a difficult task to try to compile that data anyways, because as far as data is concerned, where is that data stored? Are you doing it manually, or is it in a student record system, and how do you access that? It can be challenging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
sorry. This is Brandy. I was just going to say that I think it's great that so many did respond and said that they are aware of veterans or dependents living in their on-campus housing. So that means that your institutions are doing a good job at tracking that information for you. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for answering that. We'll have another one for you in a little bit, but we'll move on to continue the presentation. And so what we're going to talk about next is the transition. Make sure I can get over. There we go. So one of the questions is, what does it look like for a veteran when they are discharged, or when they want to look at pursuing higher education or continuing their education? And so individuals discharge and they decide they want to, perhaps specialize or earn a degree in an area of their interest. And so the first thing to note is that veterans come from a diverse service arena. I know at least my initial thought before I started doing some research and reading is that generally when I was introduced to a veteran, my initial thought is, okay, they just came from the front line, or they just came from some type of ground combat. And so the fact of that is not necessarily all of them are from combat. And so you have combat infantry, air support, ground support, the Coast Guard, in-country, and also infrastructure as well, which so not necessarily everyone is out there on the front lines, which is something to understand when you're meeting someone and learning about them for the first time. Their age depends on the service scenario, so I think the average age of veterans currently is generally around 25 to 32, which may affect their living arrangements on campus. So with the poll we just saw, it seems that there are some decent numbers of individuals, whether veterans or dependents, living on campus. But you can see that if someone is even 25 at the lower end of that average age, they may not necessarily want to live in a certain area within housing, like a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior building, maybe more so even just your campus apartments, which accommodate the type of lifestyle that they'd be looking for at that point in time. They could have a family. Large majority do live off campus is what we tend to see, but some do take advantage of on-campus housing. Next, in terms of the transition, so obviously they apply to a school, and individuals will choose to apply for benefits. So the VA benefits that are offered through the institution. I think in the past and currently it's how identification originally worked. So an individual would stop in the veteran office, the vet service office, and say, I'd like to apply for these benefits. And so that's how they would be identified to the institution as a veteran. I know currently here at Carroll, for instance, I don't believe we have any type of question on our admissions paperwork or the orientation process that identifies or asks an individual to self-identify as a veteran. So typically it'd just be they would come and apply for benefits, and that's how we would do that. But I think other schools are moving towards different ways of working to identify those veteran students so they can again work to help support that transition. There are two types of the most common benefits, which are Chapter 33 and Chapter 31, and so I'm going to turn it over to Shawn to speak about these to give you a little bit better of an idea of what they mean.
Right. Thanks, Jacob. So yeah, these are the most common benefits that are out there. Chapter 33, which is the post 9/11 GI Bill, which there was a slide earlier that Jacob had showed that showed a jump in the number of those that are using benefits in 2010. So it actually became active or effective in August 2009, but I suspect, well, I don't suspect it. There was a kind of a hiccup whenever it was first launched, and so a lot of those students that had those benefits didn't actually receive them until 2010 probably. But so that is the most common one. It's the newest one. It's it really, as far as what it pays for, it's one of the best ones out there. Besides, Chapter 31, Vocational Rehabilitation Program. And to me, that's like the, it's my favorite one. It's like the Cadillac of all the education benefits. The student doesn't have to be 100% disabled to qualify for Chapter 31, and they have to work directly with the designated voc rehab counselor for a specific program. And that counselor will also help them with job placement after they complete their program. That's something that's not necessarily provided with the post 9/11 GI Bill. It's a student using the post 9/11 GI Bill. It's up to the school to assist the student there. The VA does provide, I think they provide a letter and an email if a school reports that a student graduates, and that's just not always sufficient, but they don't have the resources to help all those students out. What these two benefits have in common is that they're the only two that pay a university or college directly for tuition and fees that a student is charged based on their eligibility rate. And both of them do involve a monthly stipend based off the zip code of the institution and the student's rate of pursuit. One thing, I guess we can go on to the next slide and challenges, but while we're going through these, I do want to just refer back to that one slide when we saw the jump in benefits being used in 2010. And whenever this will be available later on as a recording, so whenever it is, I encourage you to go back and review that again, because it's interesting how it's beginning to plateau. You know, the reason it's plateauing now is that we're not actively engaged in a massive scale, like in 2 theaters in the world. So the United States, we're not generating as many combat veterans as we were before. And we'll see what the future holds there. But it's actually not a bad thing to see fewer combat veterans. It's probably a nice thing for our veterans to give them a break, and you know, well, okay, we'll get into that later, I guess, when I talk about PTSD. So yeah, so they are starting their let me go back here. So they're starting their higher education benefits. Traditionally, we look at them as non-traditional students because there's a couple things there. They're non-traditional students in that their age, they, as Jacob said earlier, their average age is, I think he said between 25 and 32. Actually, I don't remember what he said, but that's what it is at our university, and I understand it's a wide swath there, but it's just to give you an idea of that, you know, they're not 18 or 17 years old. They're used to structured days, and they've lived in, whenever you say traditional style housing, I mean, it's something similar to the residence halls on your campuses. I mean, it's the barracks it's a community living. You share the same restroom, the same shower area. You may have a roommate or more, depending on the situation at the unit that they're at. And there is someone on every hall in the barracks that's in charge of that entire floor or half the floor. So it's quite similar to your RAs. So and if a veteran happens to be 19, it's something that it can happen. You know, we have a lot of National Guardsmen and reservists that join right out of high school, and one of the first things they do sometimes or in the past has been to deploy. So they'll have already a year in country in Iraq or Afghanistan or perhaps somewhere else, and they're coming to our college campuses as young and still at a traditional age, but their experience is completely different. They've seen things that most of our 18 and 19-year-olds have not seen or experienced in their lives. They're used to a teamwork philosophy. Military are taught to adapt and cooperate with others, but whenever they come to a college campus and let's say they have a group study assignment or work assignment, it's not quite the same because they're not wearing a uniform, they're not working within a rank system. The plane is a little more even, so it's difficult to identify the leaders and to complete assignments. So it could be a big challenge for a veteran to complete an assignment that way. You know, veterans do prefer a certain environment. When they're in a class, you may notice that, and this is something that's not new. I hope that a lot of you are aware of this, but you may notice that a lot of veterans, they don't want to sit with their back to the door. They like to keep their eyes on all of the exits or egress routes, you know, whatever you want to look at it. And sometimes loud noises can trigger previous experiences, but it could be more than that. It could something that could trigger a previous experience, such as trauma that they experience. It could be anything. It could be lighting, it could be noise, it could be certain smells. I mean, anything can set that off. But really, there are a lot of that PTSD myths out there, and you know, I'm not an expert. I'm not a clinical psychologist. I am a veteran. You know, I was in the military for 5 years, and I can relate to my other veterans that may have experienced some crazy things while being deployed or in the States as well. And one thing I think is important is that whenever we're using information about PTSD, we use verified sources. And I'm going to put something here in the chat window off to probably the right side of your screen, and this comes directly from the VA, and it kind of dispels some of the myths and lets you know how common PTSD is for even non-military folk. So I like it because it compares your general civilian population with your military population. One thing I will say, and Jacob brought this up earlier too, is that, you know, not all of our veterans are combat veterans in a traditional sense. Not all of them have actually experienced combat as we see in TV or whatnot. Most of our modern veterans, they experience combat in a different way. And let me go back to the first Gulf War in the 90s. You know, at that time we had about 2.3 million men and women in the military, and not quite 700,000 actually deployed. So that's a pretty small percentage. When today, you know, we have actually 2.5 million men and women who have actually deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan. So that includes Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Iraqi Freedom, and now it's Operation New Dawn. And in the future, it's not common now, but you know, we have all these acronyms. The military loves these acronyms. They're actually, you'll start seeing OOO instead of OEF and OIF and O&D because it's just easier. So you may see that. So if you ever see OOO, they're talking about all three of those campaigns that we've been involved in. So of the 2.5 million men and women who've served, it's hard to say how many of those have actually been in combat, but there are plenty of veterans who have not had a combat role or a combat job, such as infantry or artillery or anything like that. And they could be a truck driver. They could be a linguist. They could be anything. And a common way to move from point A to point B is on a convoy, and that's where a lot of our attacks are happening with our IEDs and BBIDs and ambush attacks. So there are a lot of individuals out there that you wouldn't think would experience combat. If someone says they were a cook in the military, you know, don't discredit them. You know, they actually served a very big need for the military and the infrastructure, but also they could have seen some crazy stuff. And I'm trying to use nice language here. One thing to point out with PTSD too, just I know I keep on having these 1 points, so apologies for that, but I do want to say that if you go to that link, you can see that about a fifth of our veterans are experiencing PTSD potentially, and actually it's not a fifth, it's more like 10 to 15%. But if you compare that with our Vietnam veterans, you know, the number of those who experience PTSD is almost double. You'll see that it's about 30%, and that's because whenever they were coming back, they didn't have this warm welcome reception. They had an educational benefit, but it wasn't as great as the post 9/11 GI Bill. And actually PTSD, although it's been around, we've known about this for thousands of years, it wasn't really getting the attention that it deserved until about the 80s. And so you have a couple of decades of these veterans who have seen some and experienced some crazy things, and they come back to the United States and they don't really get the love and support that they need when they come back. But then they also try to treat themselves with alcohol and drugs or maybe some other unhealthy habits, and so that actually kind of creates a synergy effect and you know, I guess it deeper entrenches the PTSD symptoms. There are a couple things, or actually not a couple, but there are 3 things when you're working with veterans, and you know, try not to bring up the whole, I mean, it's pretty obvious. Don't never ask a veteran if they ever killed anyone, if they ever saw anyone get killed, or if they ever got blown up or anything like that. That's just ridiculous. Please do not ask a veteran that. If they want to share that with you, then, you know, keep an open ear. But there are three things you need to keep in mind for someone who's experiencing PTSD. And so you should probably just assume this whenever you're working with a veteran, just to be safe. Someone who has PTSD, they need three things to be comfortable. They need security, they need a predictable environment, and they need a little control over their environment. So security would be one of those things as, you know, if you're meeting with them in an office, make sure that they have a clear access to the exit. Provide a predictable environment in the residence halls. You know, random searches, you know, that may agitate them, and agitating them could lead somewhere else. And I'm not talking about violence. They could break down into tears, or they may decide that they may just shut down and not want to interact with anyone. And give them a little control. Maybe give them some options. You know, if there's certain rules in your residence halls, if there's certain training that they're required to attend, give them some options so they feel they have a little control over their environment. Those are probably the three main things, and I'm going to repeat them again in case you didn't write it down, but it's just something to keep in your mind. So you want to provide a secure environment, you want to provide a predictable environment, and you want to give them a little bit of control over the environment. And predictability, it could be crazy. I mean, like, let's say you're sitting in an office having a meeting with them or something, and you're going to get up because you need to get a drink of water, or you're going to grab a file. You could just even say that as you're standing up, you can just vocalize, hey, I'm going to go grab this file right now, as opposed to just getting up and grabbing the file. That individual will be questioning in their mind, what's this person doing? What are they doing? Where are they getting in that file cabinet for? You can go ahead and prevent that and reduce a lot of that anxiety just by stating what you're doing. And Brandy's going to talk more about some of the challenges that our veterans are facing, and some of the best practices, how to work with our veterans.
Great. Thank you, Shawn, and welcome, everyone. So as mentioned before, my name is Brandy Keely. I'm the Veteran Service Coordinator here at Carroll College. And today I would like to discuss some of the best practices many institutions of higher education are adopting to better serve their veteran student population. One important theme that seems to be resonating at campuses across the nation is to provide a dedicated space for the veteran student population. So I know over at Shawn's institution they have a fairly large veteran student population, and so this space can take on several different forms. They may have a comprehensive vet center, which is home to several different student services such as the business office, the financial aid office, academic advising, and even the registrar's office. The goal with the Veteran Resource Center is to centralize all student services in one area, sort of a one-stop shop, and it also usually consists of a space dedicated specifically to their veteran students. However, smaller campuses such as Carroll's offers a Veterans Lounge. It's essentially a space where students can go to study, rest, relax, and socialize. I think the most important thing to know about the dedicated space is that it doesn't really matter how big or fancy it is. Our Veterans Lounge started out as a repurposed student dorm room. Since then it has grown. We've been able to upgrade that space, and it is now complete with a couple of computers, some couches, and a refrigerator. The point is this: veterans appreciate having their own space on campus. In fact, studies have shown that campus climate plays a significant role in the success or failure of a student. By providing a dedicated space, it sends the message to veterans that the administration is dedicated to providing them with the tools they need to be successful in obtaining their academic goals. Additionally, the space allows students to build a peer mentoring support network with one another, as veteran students desire to be part of a group whose experiences mirror their own. Through this, veterans are able to become a stronger, more cohesive group. So now we're going to pause for a minute and take another poll. We'd like to know how many of you know how to contact your campus's veteran liaison. If you just take a few minutes and fill that out, that would be great. I'll share those answers with you here. Oh, fantastic. So everybody knows how to. That's great. Okay. Well, I encourage you to be in touch with your representative, get to know them a little bit. It's good in case you ever need to enlist their help or services. Depending upon the campus, as you know, a mini representative can be housed under various departments. But it's just good to find out who that person is. If you're ever experiencing an issue with a veteran, you could reach out to them. They can help you or even connect with that student and you know, make sure that that student is getting connected with the resources and the services that they need. So also, if your institution has a veteran-friendly website page, I encourage you to seek it out and learn as much as you can about what your institution does to promote a military-friendly culture. Another way institutions are fostering a positive and supportive environment for veterans is by engaging them in events and activities that demonstrate veteran awareness and promote a military-friendly culture. For example, each year at graduation time, we honor all of our graduating veterans at our honors convocation ceremony. Their students are presented with a red, white, and blue honors cord signifying their military service, and they are encouraged to wear this at the graduation ceremony, and then their name and major is printed in the honors booklet commemorating both their military service and their academic accomplishments. While there has been lots of progress supporting veterans from an institutional standpoint, we are beginning to realize that supporting veteran service members and their families presents a larger challenge. Therefore, we have teamed up with our local community stakeholders and veteran service providers to establish a community-based support model. Currently, the Lewis and Clark County Joining Community Forces Initiative is based on a nationwide model created by First Lady Michelle Obama and Dr. Jill Biden in 2011. The mission of the Joining Community Forces Initiative is to bring attention to the unique needs and strengths of our military families, inspire, educate, and initiate action from all community sectors, including citizens, businesses, nonprofits, faith-based institutions, and public and private companies and government organizations. We are also seeking to showcase the skills, aptitudes, abilities, and leadership qualities our veterans possess to strengthen our communities, and to foster an environment of personal and family growth in an effort to build and strengthen the relationship between the military community and the community at large. Therefore, I highly encourage you to seek out your local Joining Community Forces Initiative today and find out how you can become a part of it. I think it takes a community of people to build the support structure that veterans and their families need in order to be, in order to strengthen that whole community. So it really isn't just an institutional responsibility, it's really a community responsibility. So moving on, when veterans are deployed or on active duty, they experience a sense of camaraderie and purpose. Sometimes after being discharged from the military, this sense is lost, and it can lead to a number of transition-related issues. Providing students with the opportunity to participate in community service projects may help to relieve some of those issues. For example, this last September, we coordinated with the City of Helena Fire Department, the Agency for Area on Aging, the Montana Campus Compact, and the Home Depot to provide students with the opportunity to build camaraderie within the military student body at Carroll and to improve the welfare of the community at large. After undergoing training provided by the City of Helena Fire Department, volunteers uninstalled old smoke detection units and reinstalled new smoke and carbon monoxide units in the homes of 22 elderly and disabled residents who live in the Helena Valley. The feedback we received from the students was positive in the sense that they connected with their peers and they found a renewed sense of accomplishment by contributing to the health and well-being of their community. So I encourage you, if you're doing any community service projects, to reach out to veterans. They're more than happy to engage in the project. Like I said, it provides them with a sense of accomplishment and giving back to their community, and it also helps them build that peer support network. It's quite amazing too, is I think you will find that veterans can serve as excellent peer mentors for you know, your younger students, so even your freshmen and your sophomore students. And when you start to begin to see that, it's really fantastic. So what are some things that we can do as an institution? So institutions across the nation are beginning to offer veteran-specific orientations. These orientations are designed to provide information to students on an array of topics ranging from important add and drop dates, registration priorities, and other various services that are specifically tailored to veteran students. Additionally, representatives from all relevant departments are present to discuss and answer any questions veterans may have. The veteran-specific orientation is a good way to facilitate a comfortable working relationship and let students know that there are dedicated staff and faculty members there to assist them through the transition. So it's all essentially about introducing yourself, making them feel comfortable, and just building that sort of trust and working relationship. Next, learn about your existing campus resources and the services they offer so that you can accurately connect veterans to the resource they need. Make sure you have each resource's contact information on hand so that in the event you encounter a crisis situation, you can quickly establish the contact. Don't just refer, but instead make sure that you establish the contact. Make sure the veteran is utilizing the resource, even if that means you are walking them over to that specific service location. So what are some things not to do? So as Shawn mentioned earlier, being sensitive to what the veteran has been through is really important. So refrain from asking the veteran intrusive or insensitive questions like, what was going to war like? Did you see anyone die? As these types of questions can trigger PTSD symptoms and can be offensive to the veteran. Some types of appropriate dialogues are, thank you for your service. How are your classes going this semester? Just remember that simplicity is the key, and that if the veteran wants to talk to you, they will open up and start to talk to you. Lastly, it is important to realize that not all veteran student populations are the same. Get to know your veterans, seek out their demographics, and consider your surroundings and the environment. Periodically assess your campus services and their utilization, figure out your institutional strengths and weaknesses, and then build upon them. For example, some of our veteran students are interested in creating a veteran student group in which they would like to arrange ski trips or guided fishing tours. So figure out what's available in your environment, in your community, and engage them or assist them with the engagement into those activities. Institutions that are prepared to assist their veteran student populations navigate the college experience will also reap the benefits. Veterans bring a ton of value to the classroom through their diverse perspectives, their team building capabilities, their resilience to adversity and hardships, their innovative ways of thinking, and their abilities to adapt to working with different cultures and nationalities. These students are often self-directed, motivated, and stand out as leaders within the classroom. It is the responsibility of the institution as a whole to continue to support them and provide them with a comfortable, secure, supportive learning environment in which they can thrive. So thank you for all you do to assist our veterans.
Excellent. So what we're going to do now, as we said in the beginning, is try and leave a little time for questions. So we wanted to open it up for any questions that any of the attendees might have. So if you want to take just a short period of time to post any questions that you have, we'll take a look at those. So I'll give you just a little bit of time to do that, or if we have any that have already been posted.
You know, one thing while we're waiting on questions, I failed to mention this earlier about PTSD, if you don't mind, Jacob, was the military sexual trauma that a lot of our military servicemen and women are and have experienced. You know, studies show, and we can only see what's been reported, but about 1/5 of all women who have served in the military have been sexually traumatized and while they're in service. And it's kind of surprising, you know, there's about a little over 1% of men have been sexually traumatized. And if you look at the big picture of the numbers, there's actually a higher number of men who've been sexually traumatized as opposed to women, but the percentage is just insane to think about. So that's something to consider too with when you're developing programs in your residence halls about safety awareness. Some schools, I know our state is we're initiating bringing in the bystander training where people are actually looking out for others to protect others from being in unsafe situations. So that's just another thing to look out for.
So I think we did have a couple questions. It looks like Allison asked a question, is it appropriate to ask what their job was? I think that's probably an appropriate question. However, I don't know that it would be my first question. So maybe just, talking to them a little bit first, gaining some of that trust, and then, maybe posing that question would be fine. Shawn, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Brandy. It's part of conversation. It's a safe thing, and you may find some interesting jobs in the military that you had no idea existed before.
Right. Looks like she had another question. So what if they don't want to have assistance from the Veterans Service Office on campus?
That's a tough one. I will say this, as far as Veterans Service Offices go, a lot of them have to go through our office anyways if they want to use their educational benefits. But that's okay. They're adults. In my opinion, they're adults. They have the freedom to choose whatever they want to. If they want to be as close to a traditional student as they can, they don't have to use our resources. But as long as we make them available and make sure that we're making them aware, and I think a comprehensive orientation program is a nice way to do that, but also developing those relationships with other departments on campus and training your faculty and staff how to be sensitive to veterans will help fill in those gaps for the students that don't want to use your services, because that's a reality. That does happen.
And also, if they disclose to you the nature of what sort of service they're seeking, you could always refer them out to the VA.
Are there any other questions that anybody would like to post? It doesn't seem like it. All right. Well, if you do think of any more questions, you have our contact information, and so please feel free. If something comes up afterwards, again, we have two very knowledgeable individuals, and so if anything comes up, let us know. Brandy or Shawn, were there any final points that you thought of before we finish up here?
The only point I would say is, we're talking about serving less than 0.5% of our population. The United States population, less than 0.5% of our population are currently veterans. And so you showed that statistic earlier, whether it's like 21 or 22 million veterans currently living in the United States. And just keep that in mind. We're focusing on serving a very small percentage of the population that had a very big job as far as the responsibility of the United States. So keep that in mind when we're serving our veterans. For those of you who haven't served, they're in the 99.5%, and we put a lot of that pressure on the 0.5% of those who did serve. So let's give back to them.
All right. Well, I think that that does it for today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We appreciate your commitment to continuing your professional development. We really do appreciate you taking part in the webinar today. I think it's an excellent area that at least I myself know I still need to continue to learn more about our veterans and how I can help support that transition. So we appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Just a couple of reminders for the AIMHO region. The webinar for next month, for November, is AIMHO 101, which is orientation to the region and conference. So make sure you check that out. Also, we have the regional conference coming up November 16th through the 18th. So if you haven't registered for that, make sure you do so if you're looking to attend that at Utah State University. We have the two other development opportunities that are available right prior to the conference, the Senior Housing Officer Institute, as well as AIMHO College. So make sure you take advantage of those if you're interested in that. But other than that, I think that does it for today. Once again, thank you for joining us. And as Ben said earlier, they should be available on the website once some updates are made. So thank you again, and we hope you have a good rest of your day.
And thank you to Brandy and Shawn for your expertise. And thank you to Jacob for being able to put this together for us. We really appreciate partnering with the Diversity and Social Justice Committee on these webinars. Thank you all for attending, and we hope to see you in November.